Confident, confident, confident. I can be confident, 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 confident. I can be confident at work.
Hello and welcome to the Confident at Work podcast. I'm your host and your confidence coach, Anna Manning. And today we're talking about why I trained in hypnosis and how I use it to help people feel more confident at work. So I have to back up and give you a bit of a backstory here. And you might not know this, even if you've been listening to me for a while. So I qualified as a coach in 2018. And I guess even more of a backstory for those of you who don't know. I qualified and worked as a solicitor. I did that from the beginning of my career. I worked in healthcare, I worked in medical negligence, both in a law firm and in the NHS. And then I was still working in the NHS when I trained as a coach. And it was just something that I was going to use as part of my job and have kind of on the side. So I did that in 2018, qualified as a coach. And since then, I have been working first at my place of work, coaching people within the organization, and then outside of that too. And as I started to specialize, I specialized in confidence coaching. And you might not know this either, but I tend to work with people who are good at their jobs, know what they're doing, but for whatever reason just do not feel as confident as they could do, and other people probably think they should do based on the fact that they're good at what they do, they get promoted, they get recognized, etc. And maybe that's you if you're listening to this podcast. But I've been doing that since 2018. And as I got more and more specialized, of course, working with people on confidence, I saw fairly frequently moments where the coaching, whilst it was effective, couldn't quite crack the problem that we were trying to solve. So let's say, and this is a fairly typical example, someone's generally feeling lower on confidence than they should be. We work together for 3 months, they're then feeling more confident and they go. But there might be one area, like, for instance, a fear of presenting to large groups. And that fear feels altogether different from the other confidence work we do. It feels very emotionally charged. The emotions that go with it, whether that's fear, panic, distress, anxiety, they go so high that they kind of take my clients offline and they prevent them from being able to be present, do what they need to do, get their words out, communicate with people, connect with people, think on their feet. At that point, the emotion is so high that it is so difficult for them to do what it is that they're trying to do. And those were the particular moments, those were the things that, although the coaching was helpful, it couldn't quite seem to, at least in my hands, solve that problem for that client. They would feel better, but they wouldn't feel as calm and as confident as they wanted in those moments, even though we'd sorted out the other problems that they'd come with. And that kind of annoyed me. So I guess in the back of my mind, I was looking and I was thinking, okay, it feels unsatisfactory to me that there's these little bits that I don't seem to be able to help a client to solve, even though we've solved the other things they came with. And to be honest, no one ever complained because they were usually quite delighted with how much more confident they felt generally. But it annoyed me. Now, fast forward to, well, a good few years ago, I had hypnosis for 2 different things. One, I had it for quit smoking because my partner had it for quit smoking and he told me he'd had it and he'd quit and he'd never gone back to smoking. He's one of those kind of, I'm going to say slightly annoying anti-smokers that's like, oh, smoking is disgusting, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, wow, the hypnosis obviously really did a really good job on him. Anyway, so I went to hypnosis. I had a couple of sessions. I quit smoking. I didn't smoke again after that. And I was like, that was cool. Kind of shows you the potential power of your own mind in helping you to change things. And then I had some hypnosis also for, and this is very random, but I got burgled, or I was burgled years ago, and the burglar kind of came into the bedroom as I was waking up. And after that, for years, I would avoid being in the house on my own at night. I would kind of have these panicky feelings whenever I was laid in bed. I used to think I could hear people and things. I couldn't, they weren't there. Anyway, all of these kind of symptoms. And one night I happened to be out with a friend who is a clinical psychologist, and I told her this, and she said, what you're describing is PTSD. And I was like, what? I mean, I knew about PTSD. I know people get it from, being in a war zone or being in, um, let's say, an abusive relationship, like something that felt really severe. And I was like, really? And she said, yeah, what you're describing is PTSD. And I was like, wow, can people get better from that? And she said, yeah, they can. And she kind of suggested a couple of things. And it so happened that I was going to hypnosis, and I thought, maybe I could ask the guy who was the hypnotist to help me with this particular thing. And he did, and it solved the problem. I would say completely. I do not feel like I have that problem anymore at all. And so again, I was like, oh, that's interesting, like quite powerful, quite cool. And then I started to wonder. So I had this problem where I could help clients to a certain point, but with these really emotionally overwhelming situations, I was struggling to help them. And I wanted to, because I want to do a thorough job, right? When someone comes to me, I really want to be able to help them thoroughly and properly. And I was like, well, I've had this hypnosis before. And I was following this woman online who is a hypnotist, and she actually has a school where she teaches people to be hypnotists. And so I was following her online, and I started to think, maybe this is the missing piece. Maybe this is the thing that could help my clients crack, fix, solve for these moments where the fear and the anxiety and the intensity of that emotion, it feels so high that the normal kind of coaching that I do just doesn't seem to help as much as I wanted it to. So I thought, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm going to take this hypnosis training. My teacher is called Melissa Tiers. She's based in New York. She runs the School for Integrative Hypnosis. And I thought, well, even if it doesn't work for those things, it'll make me a better practitioner, right? It'll give me tools, it'll give me skills, it'll give me knowledge. And she's very focused on knowing the research, knowing the applicability of the neuroscience research to the work that she does. So I thought, well, in any event, that'll be really interesting. And it's good for me to know, it's furthering my professional practice. So I undertook her training in hypnosis, and I qualified this time in 2024. So now when I'm recording this podcast, I've actually been qualified as a hypnotist for a year, and I've gradually added that skill set to my coaching work for my clients. And it's been very interesting as a journey. So I thought, with that very long introduction, that I would share it with you on the podcast and talk about why I trained in hypnosis, but about how I use it to help people feel more confident at work. So you remember I said I had this sneaking suspicion that maybe hypnosis could help in those moments where the emotion felt really overwhelming and just really took my clients offline. And it turns out that it can, and it does. I want to just give you 3 ways today that I use hypnosis to help clients feel more confident at work. This is not the sum total of what we do, but I think it's most of what I do with clients, is most of how I use hypnosis. Now, I don't really advertise myself as a hypnotist. So most people come to me as a coach. And if they're telling me, I have this particular problem, I have this particular scenario where the emotion feels overwhelming, blah, 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 that's not how they'll describe it to me. But they'll say, oh, I just completely panic. I like blank out. My heart rate's really high. I can't get my words out. I seem to kind of freeze up, or my heart is beating so fast. It's just really, really difficult. And when a client tells me that there is a situation or a moment, whether it's to do with a particular person, a particular environment, or a particular task, like presenting, for instance, then I will say, okay, well as coaching, I use hypnosis and tools from hypnosis to support people in those very scenarios that you've been talking about. And I offer that is something that I think might be appropriate and might help them if they feel comfortable with it and they're interested and they would like to explore it. And so far, everybody said, yeah, And it seems to me that, to be honest, most people just don't seem to care what what techniques I use, what tools I use. They just want help, right? They just want to feel better. They just don't want to feel like they feel now in those situations. And to help people understand how hypnosis is helpful, let's take that a common scenario. People get sort of like a stage fright type thing when they're presenting. To help people understand that, I say, well, you know how hypnosis helps people with phobias? Because people tend to know, like, if you have a phobia, hypnosis can help you. Like, if you're terribly afraid of spiders or you're really afraid of lifts or escalators, something like that, hypnosis can cure those phobias. Although, I should say, the work you do in hypnosis can cure those phobias. So I say to people, well, you know how hypnosis can help people if they're scared of spiders or escalators or whatever? And people are kind of familiar with this and they say, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I say, well, imagine you're in a situation where you're presenting. It's a little bit like in a situation where somebody's terribly afraid of a spider. They know logically that presenting or that spider isn't going to kill them. And yet, the emotional response is so instantaneous and it's so extreme, or it feels so extreme. You just have to put them in the situation and the pattern happens. They don't have to think, oh, it's time to get nervous now. They just start freaking out. Just like when somebody sees a spider. They don't have to work themselves up to it and start thinking, oh, I have to be scared now. They just freak out. And it's the same when somebody's presenting. It's a habituated pattern. As soon as you see the trigger, which is the spider or the presentation, your body and everything in you knows exactly how to respond, and it responds perfectly on cue every single time with fear, panic, whatever. So, if you can recondition that response that happens when you see a spider, you can also recondition that response that happens when you do a presentation. And we use the same techniques within hypnosis, which knock out that phobia, which recondition the response that happens automatically, unconsciously, when somebody sees a spider as when somebody is presenting. And it was quite heartening to find out because I postulated, I was like, maybe they're kind of the same, right? Because they have some of the same hallmarks, don't they? As I talked through them, you can hear the similarities. And it turns out that they can be dealt with in the same way. And I call that work reconditioning responses because it's an automatic response, right? Presentation, I stand up, my heart rate goes, I start panicking, I can't talk. Same thing happens when your mate's afraid of a spider. So within hypnosis, we do the work to recondition that response. And it's pretty cool when a client feels it happening in real time. So they'll come back and say, I stood up and I was fine. Nothing happened. And you're like, oh, interesting. And they're like, usually I would have been panicking, I would have been freaking out. But they were like, I stood up and there was nothing happening. And you're like, that's cool. It's great. Were you able to do what you wanted to do? Yeah, it was fine. Brilliant. That's what we want. Now, sometimes you have to go at that from a few different angles. You have to look at a few different trigger points. You have to, go through a few different fears and situations. But so far, I've seen that it's pretty effective in, at the very least, if we can't get rid of it entirely, which we have been able to, turning down the level of the emotion so that maybe you still feel a bit nervous, and I kind of feel like that's okay anyway, but you can do what it is that you're trying to do. So that is reconditioning responses. The other thing that I use it for, which to be honest is kind of the same thing, but I'm going to differentiate for your benefit, is mental rehearsal. So you might know that they use mental rehearsal a lot in sport. And I think it was originally developed by sports psychologists. So you imagine yourself doing the perfect golf swing, or you imagine yourself doing the perfect stroke in swimming. And they know from the research that your brain doesn't differentiate very well between what's actually happening in your imagination and what's happening in real life. And you know this because when you sit down to watch a film, your heart rate will increase when something scary is happening. You know that everything that's going on that screen is utter fabrication. You know that there's a camera crew and a million people stood around yelling, cut, right? You know it's not real. And yet, your physiology is responding like it is real. Your heart rate is increasing. When they want you to jump, you jump. Brains don't differentiate that well between what's going on in our minds or on a screen and what's going on in real life. So you'll notice the same thing. Let's say you're in the shower and you're mentally rehearsing an argument with your partner. Don't tell me you haven't done this. You're lathering up your hair and you're getting more and more annoyed and you're having this two-sided argument with your partner. Right? Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist at all. They're not there. They're not having an argument with you, but you will be getting more and more stressed. Your cortisol and your adrenaline will be flowing. You'll be really getting into it. It's not happening. It's not real, but it's real to your physiology when it's happening in your mind. Same as when it's happening on a screen and you react like it's real. Well, when we use mental rehearsal, we use that, but strategically. So if I know that you want to feel a certain way in a certain board meeting, we use mental rehearsal, which is even more powerful when we have that really calm and focused state that we have in hypnosis, to put you in that situation mentally and help you respond to everything that's going on around you, but with a very different emotional signature. So it may be that when you're sat in that boardroom normally, you're nervous, maybe you're a bit fearful, maybe you're a bit intimidated, maybe you feel like you're on the back foot, maybe you become really withdrawn or really quiet. But when we get you in a nice, really calm, really focused state, we can mentally put you back into that boardroom. And now we do it with the state that you want to inhabit. So let's say you want to feel calm. You want to feel confident. You want to feel completely in control. We rehearse that while you are mentally in that room. And then we take you through all those scenarios that might occur. What is it that really pisses you off in that room? Is it that somebody talks over you? Is it that two people are having an argument and you're not getting anywhere? Is it that when someone dismisses your point and then 10 minutes later someone starts saying it and everybody agrees with them, you become so annoyed you withdraw? Right? All of these are real examples that I coach on all of the time. So if you're listening to this and thinking, she's talking about me, I'm talking about everyone. We mentally rehearse you seeing those moments, you being there now, but with a completely different emotional state. And when you have a completely different emotional state, which you're able to access, and then we ramp that up as much as we can, you will see that situation again through new eyes, through fresh eyes, and you will notice things that you never noticed before. You will feel ways you've never felt before in that moment, and you will respond differently in mental rehearsal. Now, the magic of this is that that will change how you actually respond when you get into that moment in real life. And what that allows through that process of mental rehearsal, through that process of you experiencing in that moment like you've never done before, a completely different emotional state, which allows you access to completely different responses, completely different choices, and completely different ways of doing things, all geared and directed. Remember, I said we're using this strategically. So everything's geared towards how you want to feel, how you want to contribute, what you want to have happen when someone dismisses you or talks over you, or there's an argument going on in the room. We help you to practice the emotional state that you would need to be how and who you want to be in that moment. And once you've learned that in this mental rehearsal place, you can do it in real life, and it's very cool to watch. The last thing that I want to tell you about, the last time when I think using these tools from hypnosis is really, really helpful, is to help you gain some kind of insight, to help you access some kind of insight that you may have been struggling to access. So let's say you've got a big situation happening and it's all a bit overwhelming, it's all a bit stressful, and it's all a bit difficult. And this is just one example. And you come to the coaching session and you say, I need to figure out what to do about this. But you're actually going to struggle to figure out what to do because you can't see the wood for the trees. You're still in that state, which makes it really difficult to just step back and see things really clearly. But you need to be able to do that somehow. I might offer in that moment, would you like to access a state here with me where you're really going to be able to step back from the situation and see things clearly? Most people in that situation are like, yes, please, because that's really what I need to be able to do, even though it's so tricky for us in the moment. And that process of going inside, that process of relaxation, it doesn't even need to be formal or fancy. Sometimes I just get people to take one breath and close their eyes and then guide them a little bit, and then we're off. You can access things that the deep down part of you knows, that your unconscious knows, ways of solving problems, decisions that you already know the decision that you want to make. But it might be so clouded by overwhelm or everybody else's voices or other people's opinions. And using the tools from hypnosis in that moment can be so powerful because it gives you the moment, it gives you the break, it puts that barking dog of all of that mind chatter to sleep for long enough that you have the time and the space to just be still, to drop in, and to really see and feel things clearly. And amongst the busyness of everyday life, and certainly the busyness of everyday working life, that can be so helpful. We've got big decisions to make, things on our shoulders at work. And yet, in the busyness and the bustle of everyday life, we don't always find it easy to access that place of stillness, of calm, of strength, of certainty, of knowing that we need to act with wisdom, to act in accordance with our own integrity and with our own beliefs and all the rest of it. And hypnosis can be really, really helpful in helping you have that moment, take that moment, slow down enough, put that incessant barking dog of mental noise to sleep for long enough that you can see the wood for the trees. And you can use these insight processes in all kinds of ways. And I have clients that have done amazing things with them. This is not prescriptive work. I know what the tools are, I know what the science says, and I know what we're trying to do, but it's very free within that. So I'm going to go with the client. They might see something, say something, and we'll use that as part of the hypnosis. We might use that to deepen the experience, to help them see something, to help them recognize something, whatever it is. And there are some pretty cool examples. You really never know where these sessions are going to go. But in my experience, they always go somewhere good. So that's why I trained in hypnosis. And that is just 3 of the ways. This is a not exhaustive list. Just 3 of the ways that I use hypnosis to help my clients feel more confident at work. If you think this is the kind of help and support that you might need, you are welcome to book a call and come and talk to me about how to work together. There is a link in the show notes. You can click through, book a time in my diary, and come and have a chat with me about coaching and or hypnosis. All of these tools I just have in my tool belt in order to help you feel more confident at work. All right, I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.
Confident, confident, confident. I can be confident, 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 confident. I can be confident at work.